We are talking about the Stoics. The founder of Stoicism is generally regarded as who? Founder is, Nicole? Zeno of Citium. The word Stoic derives from what, Stephen? Stoa. Which means porch. I've always thought that'd be kind of a cool place to teach from, this long porch. You just walk up and down in flowing robes. Like, I think we should wear, I could get into flowing robes, you know? It's more flattering to your physique, you know? It's really, I could see it. But, be that as it may, that's where the term comes from. It's one of the few philosophies that was not named for its founder. We have Platonism, we have Aristotelianism, we have Epicureanism, we have a ton of isms named for the founders, but in the case of Zeno, it's not Zenoism, it's Stoicism. So I don't know how that happened exactly, but that's the way it is. We're working through fundamental features of Stoicism, and the first one that I gave you is the notion of clear judgment. Even though Zeno was a Greek, what nationality probably embraced Stoicism more famously than any other? Who are the most famous Stoics in the history of the world? Strangely, it's not Greeks, but who is it? The most famous Stoics turned out to be, anybody know? Got a guess?
Were the Ionians? The Ionians were
well, they would still be Greeks. Anybody?
The Romans?
The Romans. The Romans. And really some of the greatest Stoic philosophers were Roman. So even though it started as a Greek movement, it became very much more conspicuously Roman. Who are some of the most famous Roman Stoics? Their names you know. Most famous Stoics that were Roman? I don't know. Spencer?
Is Julius Caesar a Stoic?
Julius Caesar had a lot of Stoic qualities, for sure. Most of the really important and famous military figures in Rome were very Stoic in their outlook, but he was not a Stoic philosopher. These are actual philosophers. Sidney? Cicero has a lot of Stoicism in him, and I would put him in a second list. He's a philosopher, and he has a lot of Stoicism, and some people would say, yeah, he was a Stoic philosopher. I would say not quite, but you've got an awful lot of Stoicism in him. That's a good... Anybody else? Who was one of the most famous tutors to Nero? A man who eventually had to die by self-inflicted, which is what it always is, suicide. You know. Sort of true by definition, but it was self-inflicted suicide. Good heavens. Oh, but who was it? Who was one of the most famous tutors to Nero in the early years of Nero's reign when he was still, you know, slightly sensible before he went totally bonkers? And the name is, somebody know? The name of Seneca. Seneca, Stoic philosopher. There is one Roman emperor who is probably as famous for being a Stoic philosopher as he is for being a Roman emperor. And his name is, Jacob? Marcus Aurelius. There's another lesser known, I don't know that you'll know this name, but it's well known in philosophical conversation, Epictetus, who was writing about the beginning of the 2nd century. Many people think he may have been personally acquainted with the Apostle Paul, because much of his writing reflects a little bit of a, what you call a Pauline influence, but he was more of a Stoic philosopher. He was not a Christian, but you have that little trace of what appears to be Paul's influence there, and others, but that simply makes the point. All of these guys were concerned about, first and foremost, reaching a philosophy of clear judgment, and they mean that in a practical sense. Remember, Stoicism is a practical philosophy. It's not trying to answer big questions about the huge, Platonic concerns of an ideal world and all of that, but it's very concerned about just how do I get through life in a sensible fashion. And for the Stoics, the answer is you always exercise your best rational faculties. You're never swept away by your emotions, by your passions, your lusts, your desires. All of those things have to be put into some kind of disciplined place, and you let reason guide you. Okay. The second term that shows up is discipline. These are all, by the way, related. You're going to see a little bit of overlap as we go along. But the idea is that you discipline your life, meaning you create life disciplines that guide you through each day. You don't just let yourself be carried along by whims, that kind of spontaneous, unpredictable, usually irrational impulse that tends to grab us, and tends to be the case of most human beings, that we are victimized by our passing fancies, little things that just kind of catch us. Oh, that looks like a good idea, and you suspend whatever good thing you're doing and run off on a little, as they called it in law school, frolic and detour, from what you're supposed to be doing, that kind of thing. Discipline. It's been noted many times, by the way, that, there's a lot in common between the Christian ethic and Stoicism. And some people have actually argued that the Christians got it from the Stoics. That's not true, but I just want you to realize there's a certain amount of common ground here that you'll probably recognize. The third one is reason. For the Stoic, reason does not simply mean the use of logic, but it was involved with what they considered to be the process of nature. They thought life has a kind of natural process to it, and you need to get in step with that. So they are the great champions in the ancient world of what's sometimes called natural law. Which, by the way, Sydney, was very important to Cicero. And that's part of what gets some people interested in seeing Stoicism in Cicero. Cicero was a great champion of the notion of natural law, that there are certain ways that we should live that are just dictated by nature. And you can see it as you look at life. You just notice that people tend to live by certain rules, and when they depart from those rules, we all sort of sense that they've taken, a frolic or detour. They've gone off the rails. They've gone in a bad direction. So let me ask you, are you aware of anything in the New Testament that would stand for the idea that there is a natural law that people just sort of intuitively follow? Oh, I thought your hand was in the air. No. Jacob's just sitting there in a state of deep thought. And I thought he was trying to answer. Does anybody know, is there anything in the New Testament? Josiah, can you think of anything in the New Testament that would stand for the proposition that there is a kind of natural law by which we sort of intuitively or instinctively, not as Christians, but just as human beings, that we live our lives?
Are you looking for a story or more of a just passage?
Any text at all. Anything you can raise here would be fair game. Can you think of anything that might meet that criterion?
Well, I think of Romans 1:20.
That's a pretty good place to go, yeah.
Since the creation of the world, just needed to ask you to clearly be understood by things that are made.
Sure. Yeah.
So that never has
Right. That's good. Is there anything you can think of that's more precise than that? That's a good place. That's a good text. And you could kind of broadly say that suggests a knowledge of God, and at least inferentially of God's ways, God's law. Anything? No? No? Just, all right. Listen to this text. This is in Romans 2, beginning about verse 12. Listen to what Paul says. You've all heard this, I assume, but listen to it in this connection. When the Gentiles, who do not have God's law, do by nature the things of the law, they show the work of the law written in their hearts. Their consciences busy accusing others as they excuse themselves. Do you see that? Isn't that interesting? There's the Apostle Paul. Now, some people have accused Paul of being Stoic there. You get these critical scholars who say, Paul, borrowing from the Stoics and so on. But I think you could say from a Christian point of view, there is an idea that God has planted in the human heart a sense of his law. It's there by what we call general revelation. And it does represent a kind of natural law. It's very interesting. How many of you know the name Clarence Thomas? Thank you. Who is Clarence Thomas? Avery's saying, don't call on me, don't call on me. Who is Clarence Thomas? You all know the name. Josiah, who is Clarence Thomas?
He's a justice in the Supreme Court.
That's right. He's a United States Supreme Court justice. His nomination was very controversial. This is back a little before your time. It was quite controversial because Clarence Thomas is a black man, but he's also a strong conservative, and usually you don't get those in the same package at those levels of academics. And so it put the Senate in a very ticklish position. They didn't want Clarence Thomas because he was a conservative, but they couldn't go after him too viciously because he was black. You see how tough that is? Because you're going to come off racist. This is back in the 80s. And they were trying to find something to go after this guy about. And one of the first things Clarence Thomas said when he was interviewed by the press, he was asked this question. It was a trick question. It was a setup question. The question was, put to Clarence Thomas, do you believe in natural law? And Clarence Thomas said, of course. And the press just went crazy. And Teddy Kennedy went crazy. And all of these people go, this man believes in natural law. Can you believe that? That's horrible. We're going to have a guy on the Supreme Court that actually believes in natural law. What a absolutely outrageous thing that could be. Because natural law has become an idea that stands for the notion that there are absolutes by which we're supposed to live our lives. And you, my children, live in the age of relativism. And we don't want our lawyers and our judges believing that there is actual, absolute moral truth by which you're supposed to live your lives. And so everybody just went crazy. And that was getting a lot of press. The odd thing was, of course, that here you've got a judge who's going to take the position on the U.S. Supreme Court, and the most controversial thing that he can say is that he believes in moral absolutes. That's a little scary, isn't it? Doesn't that kind of alarm you a little bit? And it hasn't gotten any better. Of course, this whole thing, I don't know, do you know what came in after this that really became much more prominently discussed in the press than his statement about natural law? This was before your time. There was a lady that came in named Anita Hill, and she claimed that Clarence Thomas had sexually harassed her years earlier when she had worked for him in a law office. And the press really went crazy over that one. So then it was just this was daily on C-SPAN, and I mean, it was just in all the papers, everything. And the whole thing became quite a circus. But Clarence Thomas he did survive the storm. He was eventually placed on the U.S. Supreme Court, has served, in my opinion, admirably in spite of that, and he's always felt that whole thing, which was just bogus, from the start, was just to sort of impair him throughout his career. And he's always had to carry that kind of stigma that he had that accusation there. But anyway. Natural law goes back to the Stoics, also arguably goes back to Paul, and may go back much deeper than that. Number 4, the Stoics were committed to virtue. Virtue. They believed that if you live your life according to natural law, you're going to live a virtuous life. And they really made famous what are called the 4 cardinal virtues. I'm wondering if you've ever come across these. Do you know these? The 4 cardinal virtues. These are not distinctively Stoic. You can find them in Aristotle. You can find them earlier. They've been around. But these are regarded as the virtues that you would uncover by reflecting on natural law. Okay? And there's 4 of them. And yes, you do need to know them.
So there are 8 things of Stoicism?
There are 8 things of Stoicism, and one of them has 4 subpoints. But I'm not worried about you because you're very smart and able to get this stuff. Huh? And, of course, I realize that though you have some other trivial classes that you take around this place, this is the only course that matters. Right? I mean, we all agree on this, don't we? This is the only class that matters. And so, anyway, have you ever come across the 4 cardinal virtues? I actually mentioned these to you briefly last year in ethics. And I said, probably sometime next year we'll come back to these. And all of you were half asleep then. Didn't catch that. But here we are, as advertised, back to the 4 cardinal virtues. Anybody know what they are? Can you know any of them? Can you name any of the 4 cardinal virtues? Okay. You've got to know these. Yes, Josiah.
I'm going to go for it. Faith, hope, charity.
Okay, that's good. Those 3 are usually added to these as the virtues that come by revelation. So if I could put it this way, there's virtues that come by reason and virtues that come by revelation. That's been the classic Christian understanding. Faith, hope, and love have basically been understood as those things that we gain by God's revealed truth, but we could actually figure these out based strictly on reason. So, it's not those 3, but that's a great answer. Anything else come to mind? Temperance is one of them. Huh? Temperance? It's the last one. It's an E, by the way, and I don't know. What is temperance, by the way, Josiah? What does that word mean?
It's kind of an older word for self-control.
Okay. Or moderation. So the ideas here, it's fine to enjoy things, but don't let anything take over your life. Yes.
Is prudence one of them?
Prudence is not one of them, but it's awfully close to the first one, which is usually placed as wisdom. And I've actually heard prudence used instead. So I would prefer the word wisdom here, but you will hear that word used, prudence.
Fortitude one?
Courage. So you probably learned the same list with slightly different terms then. Courage. or fortitude. Fortitude you'll hear just as often as courage. And one other one, then.
Is it magnanimity?
Magnanimity is not it. That's an important one, but it isn't part of these cardinal virtues. But that idea of being generous. Okay, the third one is justice. Justice. All right. The four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, controlling your fear, justice, which stands generally for integrity, saying what you mean, meaning what you say, truthfulness, so on, and temperance, a kind of moderation in life. So you're never given over in extremes to any one thing. Okay. Next is the emphasis on, I'll just put it on knowledge. I'm going to put it that way. That's not the very best word, but there's not any good English word that's much better. The Stoics believed that, this is really more the point, the Stoics believed that unhappiness and evil in the world are the direct result of ignorance. They believe that crime, that vice, that bloodshed, bad behavior, all of these things flow from ignorance. And that if we could just educate people sufficiently, we would rid the world of all of these awful things. And so they were one of the earliest advocates of universal education. They believed that everybody should be educated, and that if you could just get everybody to read and write, and could, train them in good, solid educational stuff, that you would find crime rates would drop, you would find behavior would improve, that we would all live better lives and be better people. And what do you think? Is there any truth to that? Kaylee, what do you think? Is there any truth to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's essential.
All right. See, good Christian answer. Christians don't disagree with that. We are for education. Everywhere that the Christian church has gone, it has, among other things, built schools. We believe people should be able to read and write. Do we believe that education, Matthew, fixes the condition of the human heart? No. What do we think about education? Why does it have this value? What's the value of it?
The value of education is that we should do everything best for our ability, and this is I guess for us students, this is our job that God's given to us.
Okay, sure. As a student here, yeah.
And the Lord tells us to pursue wisdom.
Okay, that's right. Jordan, what is the purpose of education? Matthew's given a good answer. I want you to see if you can supplement it at all. Why? Why bother? I mean, hey, after all, we all know there are video games at home waiting, languishing for your attention. And here you are in a class, getting educated. Why?
So you can get a good job.
Yeah, that's right. So you can go get a good job and make a lot of money and buy more video games, of course. I don't know why I didn't see that. Thank you, Jordan, for that helpful clarification. Ben, why are you bothering getting educated besides your...
To illustrate using the Matrix, which is actually a very interesting movie.
That's right.
Morpheus says that he must show Neo the door, but it's Neo's choice to walk through.
All right. This sounds great.
It's your own door of truth. Supposedly, it's our choice to walk through.
All right. Okay. That's wonderful. It's a little over my head, though, my son. I still need to know why bother getting educated. It's a little too deep for me. Why are we bothering? Without using matrix metaphors. Not that it's bad. I like matrix too, but... Okay. Krista, why bother?
So we can gain wisdom, since that's the highest.
Good. And why does that matter? Why should we have wisdom? Well, who cares? Go ahead. There's a simple answer to this. There's a simple answer to this. There really is, and it's the correct answer, I may add. What is it, Sydney?
Well, I'm kind of thinking in terms of science. We do science to learn about God's creation.
Yeah.
Which reflects God.
Yeah.
So when we're learning these subjects, we're learning more about God.
That's certainly true. That's certainly true. So hopefully we can worship God more intelligently and thoughtfully by virtue of this. Why would you go and get educated in the fine art of fixing an automobile? Why would you do that? Now, I know there's kind of an obvious answer that you might think of, but I'm looking for something a little more Christian. Why might you go, Stephen, and get educated in the fine art of fixing automobiles? L'automobile, as they see in Italia.
Well, I was going to go with the obvious answer.
And the answer would be?
Have cars and need to get fixed.
People have cars and need them to be fixed, and now put a Christian ethic in the middle of that answer. What's the answer? You would learn a skill, any skill, so that you could what? Help others. Serve. Listen to me, my friends. You are Christians in order to serve. That's why you're a Christian. Not the only reason, but fundamental reason. You are out there to serve. Jesus highlights that constantly, doesn't he, in his teaching? He that would be greatest among you, let him be what? Servant of all. You are servants. I'm a servant. That's all I am. I'm a servant. I'm here at this moment trying to serve you. An education simply helps you be a better servant. An educated person can serve more meaningfully than an uneducated person. Do not view your education as the key to getting more money, bigger house. I mean, it may do that. That's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Everything you learn in every class you take, you should be filtering that in this question: how can I use this to serve others? Or who can I serve today with what I just gained from Mr. Palpin's class, or even Mr. Gore's class? How can I serve somebody with this? And that, you see, from the Christian point of view, is the whole reason we get excited about knowledge. That's why we build schools and say, Christian parents, you should send your kids here. Is because we want you to have that capacity, right? So again, we say the Stoics were on the right track. We don't dislike these guys. In the broader scheme of things, they didn't, we like them a lot better than the Epicureans, to be honest with you. We even see some things in Epicureanism that we don't object to. But in the Stoics, we actually see some things that are helpful. But we would say, of course, they, in a sense, just don't go far enough. All right, next one. The Stoics made heavy use of the Greek word logos. And that, of course, is a term that you've all come across. So what is logos? What is that word? Mr. Ansett? Give us a little elaboration of the significance of the word logos.
Logos is a means of persuasion.
Yes, in rhetoric, certainly.
It's basically the spoken word.
It's the spoken word, correct. It's a good start. Anything else you want to say? Okay,
School in Moscow.
It's a school in Moscow. Thank you. Great. Anything else?
I don't know.
Okay. And what else? Megan, what else does the word logos suggest to us?
It's the truth or the basic, well, in rhetoric, it's basically what the entire thesis or whatever is saying. So it's the basic truth of the entire argument.
It is that, absolutely. So you have that rhetorical use of it from Aristotle. Logos, pathos, ethos, and logos is the logic of it. From a Christian point of view, why do we kind of get excited about the word logos? Ms. Greek scholar, Sydney, what is it?
Well, in John 1:1 it talks about Jesus being the Word, and it's what sustains this world and what created it.
Okay. So we as Christians say that there is a principle at the heart of things by which these things operate. It is the principle that gives meaning and coherence to everything, and it is the logos. By him all things consist. We say the logos is a person, you know. But the Stoics, again, had a similar idea, and it goes all the way back to Heraclitus, that there is a rationality or coherency principle in things, and that coherency principle in things is something we need to be aware of, and in some ways we have it in each of us. That would be a Stoic idea. The Stoics, again, have a good concept. They go a little bit of a bad direction with it because they actually speak of what they call the logos spermatikos. I won't test you on that, but for the super students who want to make a note of that, logos spermatikos, the seed word, which they also conceived of as fire. And so the Stoics gave us the idea that in every human being there is a spark of the divine. Isn't that sweet? What do you think of that, Avery? Doesn't that sound like a good kind of Christian idea? In every human being there's a spark of the divine. What do you think of that? Yeah. Would you agree with that statement? I think that's... No? Good heavens. You know, there's not a spark of the divine in each of us?
Well, I don't know exactly what they mean by divine, but I kind of get the idea of the Holy Spirit, and I don't think the Holy Spirit is in everyone because if it was,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Okay. That's good. Good answer. What do you think of that statement? Have you ever heard that before? Anybody's, you get a lot of that in sort of New Age stuff. In everybody, there's a spark of the divine. Sarah, what do you think of that? That get you all excited as a Christian? No. Don't like it very much. And why not, my dear? Why do you have such a negative attitude in here? Don't like it very much?
Well, I did think New Age and just the theme of everyone gets to heaven because you have God in you.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. The Christian faith stands for the idea that we don't have a spark, we don't have a smoking ember, we don't have a wisp of divinity in us. There is no divinity in any of us. We are creature, God is creator, and there's a radical difference between them. God may inhabit us, as Avery was saying, through the Holy Spirit, but that's a very different thing from saying that in every one of us is a spark of the divine, as if you're a little bit of a god. And that was the Stoic idea. So the Stoics on this one, we like their logos idea. We agree that there is this great principle of coherence. When they start saying that we have it in each one of us and that this is sort of our great dignity, a spark of the divine within us, we get a little bit uneasy with that. A little bit of pantheism there. Seventh, Stoicism was a way of life. If you're a Stoic 24/7. It wasn't like you just went to the temple and did a little religious ritual and then went home and, did something else. You are constantly, in every moment of your life, a Stoic. It is shot through your total understanding of who you are. It's a way of life. Question over here, was that you, Josiah?
Going back to Logos,
Mm-hmm.
we view the fact that we are created in the image of God.
Yeah.
It's been marred, but can those two be reconciled?
Yeah. How would we reconcile? That's an excellent question. You've got on the one hand the clear biblical teaching that we are created in the image of God, and on the other hand, a repudiation of the idea that there's a spark of the divine in every one of us. At least I'm making that statement. Can we reconcile those two? Do you want to try? Give it a go? I think there's a way to reconcile them. How would we do it?
I think where we reconcile it kind of depends on what they mean by spark, like you're talking about. It's kind of vague, but in a sense, I think part of being created in the image of God is that we've been called out among all creation as something that is it's not like He made plants and dogs and giraffes in the image of God. We're specifically called out as created things. So in a way that we have some sort of divine, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's what the Stoics were aware of. I think they were sensing that there's something distinctly dignified about the human species, and they didn't know any other way to say it than a spark of the divine. And so I'm rejecting that, but granting sympathetically that they're onto something. And I think what they're onto is this imago Dei. Now, how do we distinguish that? How do we say there's not a spark of divinity in us, but we are created in the image of God? Anyone want to put that together? How would we do that? How do we allow that we're created in the image of God, but we don't want to go down the road of there's a spark of the divine? Because remember what the spark of the divine is saying is that you are a little bit of a God. That's the point. There's a little bit of deity in you, you see. That's what we don't like. We say as Christians, I've got zero deity in me. I'm not any kind of God. I'm just a creature. I'm an ant. I'm a worm. I'm just a little tiny speck of dust before God. Don't insult the deity by calling me anything like divine, okay? But we're in the image of God. Come on, you theologians in here. How are you going to put that together? Zero hands in the air. Please, Krista.
Got the question right, but we can still be made in the image of God without being God. So, like God, we're the picture that God has painted, and so an artist isn't in his painting.
Okay.
His style isn't.
I like that, and I'd go just one, in terms of metaphors, I'd take it one step further. Where do you see an image? The term image is most commonly associated with what kind of device? Where do you typically see an image? Every one of you has used one of these devices today. And it is what? Where do you see an image? You see it in a mirror. Don't you? What's that? You haven't used one? Well, we can tell, actually. You look at a mirror, and you see what? An image of yourself, and you might actually say, in a loose moment, look, there I am in that mirror. But we all know you're not really in the mirror, right? We know there's no part of you in that mirror. You do not exist in that mirror at all, not a bit. It is an inanimate object. It is not alive. It's just a device, but it's really good at reflecting your image. And I think that's, again, I don't want to push this too far, but I think that's pretty close to the biblical idea. We all, with open face, viewing as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are transformed into the same image. Paul says, 2 Corinthians 3:18, right? We're reflecting His glory. We can reflect the glory of God in a way that a giraffe cannot. That doesn't make me God. But it means that somehow you can look at a human being and see something of God's reflection. And that's our great dignity. Does that make sense? That would be the difference between a Stoic view of this notion and a Christian view. The mirror doesn't become human because you see your face in the mirror. It's still just a mirror. It's lifeless. But it's very good at reflecting. And that's what we do. We reflect the glory of God in some sense. All right. Last one. Time's running out. The Stoics were the first ancient cosmopolitans. Joseph, what do I mean when I say somebody is cosmopolitan? Every time you walk through a supermarket and you go through the checkout stand, you see a magazine cover there and you do not look at it. Warning to young men, do not look at the cover, but you see, there's a magazine there and it's called Cosmopolitan, right?
Well, I guess that would mean...
What is it? What does it mean to cosmopolitan?
Is it like... Well, I got a picture of a celebrity magazine, so...
Yeah, you're pretty close, right?
Something like... Yeah.
Yeah, what does it mean? Matthew, what does it mean to be cosmopolitan? What does that mean?
Something to do with modern media.
It could be modern media. It certainly is a popular term these days, but that's not its technical sense. Okay? Jacob, what does it mean to be cosmopolitan?
You don't really know.
You don't know. Anybody know this? What is the word cosmo? Cosmo is a root that basically means what? The cosmos would be, Avery?
I think that's the world.
The world. And the polis is what? The city. So a cosmopolitan is one for whom what? The world is his city. He's a citizen of nowhere. He's as much concerned about China as America. He has no national identity, at least in theory. No patriotism, no commitment to local concerns. He's a citizen of the world. He is a globalist. Right? You ever thought about that? That's kind of a popular idea these days, isn't it? We live in a global, this and that. Well, the Stoics are the first people to ever come along who really just commit themselves to a cosmopolitan politic and ethic, and so on. They don't think it's distinct to be Greek, they're just kind of citizens of the world. Avery. Yeah, I know, boy, that's very good. I know what you're going to ask me, and I want to congratulate you because you put that together so fast. I'm impressed. But go ahead, ask the question.
The most famous Stoics were the Romans.
That's exactly right. They were very Roman. Yeah. And this is the point where the Romans are less Stoic than the original Stoics. Avery, it's an excellent, and that's very good. You put that together that quickly. I'm quite impressed. It means you're paying attention, which is very impressive. And because sometimes I feel like I mean that because sometimes I feel like it's just you and me, man. It's kind of like. So everybody else gets the insult. You got the compliment here, But anyway, sorry. I know you're all listening. I realize that. I'm just giving you a bad time. But this is a point where the Romans were not quite as stoic as others. They did believe in the distinctiveness of Romanness, but even the Romans, Avery, even the Romans had a vastly more cosmopolitan outlook than, say, the Greeks did, or the Assyrians or others, because remember, the Romans were willing to let anybody in. It was the Roman Republic. And they would conquer people, but oddly enough, if you didn't put up a fuss, they would actually just say, welcome to the club. You can buy citizenship, you can buy, so they had a kind of cosmopolitan spirit to them. Even though you talk to Julius Caesar, he would have been all over that. I'm a Roman. I mean, he was very proud of that. But in their official outlook, they had a kind of more of a cosmopolitan. I mean, if you resisted them, then they'd come and pound you into dust. But if you said, hey, sure, we'll play ball, great, welcome to the party. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of a balance there. All right. Anyway, I do want you to know those. There's a little more about Stoicism I ought to say, but I'm not going to. I had some quotes. Let me give you a couple of the quotes. These are typical. I'll never test you on these, just to get a flavor of the kind of things Stoics would say. Seneca said, quote, "The point is not how long you live, but how nobly you live." No. That's a very typical kind of Stoic outlook. Seneca said this, "That which fortune has not given, she cannot take away." That's a quotable, right? That which fortune has not given, she cannot take away. Fortune may give you, by pure accident, some great benefit. But of course, anything fortune gave you, anything good luck gave you, bad luck can take away. Simple as that. Seneca said, "Virtue is nothing else than right reason." The Stoics were good at these little one-liners that sort of, they have some value to them. Epictetus said, quote, "Wherever I go, there I am." No, I didn't say that. "Wherever I go, it will be well with me." Here's a quite typical Stoic one that I'll leave you with. "Freedom is not secured by the fulfilling of one's desires, but by the removal of desire." Ooh, interesting. A little touch of Buddhism in that one. And with that, my friends, arrivederci.